So the Olympics and many other professional sports has a very strict no tolerance policy when it comes to performance enhancing drugs, right? Because they want everyone to have a level playing field, right? They want it to be fair for everyone, even people who choose not to take performance enhancing drugs. But what if, hypothetically, hear me out, there was a competition, there was just one competition that let them use drugs? It'd be kind of fun. They would all be able to use drugs. So, I mean, it'd be a level playing field if they're all using drugs. And in addition, we'll really get to see how far the human body can go beyond what is natural. You know what I'm saying? How high can a human jump? How fast can a human run? How much can a human lift? All of the answers to these questions are constrained by the constraints of human biology. What if we just let all the athletes use the drugs? It'd be fun. And they would be able to do so much more. Now, this has been the thought experiment of many stoners for a very long time. But very recently, this idea has come to the mind of a man named Aaron D'Souza, who happens to be very rich. He's sort of like a venture capitalist, tech entrepreneur type guy. A lot of money, essentially. And he has recently announced the Enhanced Games, a sort of Olympics-esque sort of event with the modification that no participant is going to be screened for any type of drug. This is exciting. So it's planned to take place in December of 2024. No specific date or location. 5 categories: track and field, swimming, weightlifting, gymnastics, and combat fighting. But there is a slight problem with these games, in my opinion. And that's the fact that most professional athletes probably don't want their image to be associated with performance-enhancing drugs. And participating in this event would automatically associate them, with performance-enhancing drugs, because that's literally the whole point. So I think he's going to have a little bit trouble actually attracting the top-tier athletes that participate in other, sort of events that are PED-free. Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose the whole thing could just fall apart before it ever comes to fruition, and we could just never see this in action. And quite frankly, maybe that would be a good thing. But a small part of me kind of wants to see it, I'm kind of interested. You gotta admit, it's kind of interesting. He actually has convinced 3 Olympians to join the advisory commission to this whole project. But the funny thing is, I think all 3 of the Olympians were kind of well, I would never use performance-enhancing drugs, but in theory, I think it's fine. For D'Souza, the organizer of the Enhanced Games, he talks a lot about sort of the stigma that are placed on people that use performance-enhancing drugs. And it kind of leads to a shocking analogy. I would like to read to you a quote from D'Souza. Quote, "I'm a gay man, and so much about building this movement makes me think about the history and acceptance of LGBT community people in the wider community. Think back 50 years ago about being a gay man was like being enhanced today. It's stigmatized, it's marginalized, it's illegal in some senses. What changed? Well, Pride happened, a movement of people, a revolution of people who rallied around an idea of acceptance." And the enhanced.org website has a whole page on inclusive language, on how to include people who use performance-enhancing drugs. And it does kind of read like a conservative parody. of like a parody of like the left, what they would say. The colonialist origins of doping. Steeped in racial prejudice, doping and its variations are harmful words wielded by sports federations to keep athletes from embracing science. The term originates from the colonialist Dutch forces description of the performance enhancements used by the defending West African tribes. The word was soon used to describe the medical enhancements given to horses before being weaponized against the black population in the 1980s war on drugs. Today, black athletes are disproportionately accused of doping. Doping is a colonialist slur that reeks of symbolic and historic violence against both the black and enhanced populations, and it needs to be removed from our vocabulary. So here are some ways that you can be more inclusive towards people who use performance-enhancing drugs. So it notes that being enhanced isn't a preference or lifestyle choice. When we talk about science and being enhanced, we're not talking about preferences or choices or value judgments. We're just talking about how people are. Wait, what? It's not a lifestyle choice. But I mean, isn't it? Don't assume a person is not enhanced. Don't assume that everyone is natural. That is, that they don't use science to enhance themselves, or that this is the norm. This profiling devalues the identities and lives of people who are identified as enhanced. Avoid using language such as clean athlete or clean competition, as this implies that the process of using science is dirty, which is hurtful and a harmful stereotype. Step 2. Scrub harmful and discriminating language from your vernacular. Language can be used to unite, but it can also be used to divide. We are emerging from a dark period in sports history in which the incumbent sports federations used their monopolistic power to exploit athletes and prevent the rightful inclusion of science in sport. The World Anti-Doping Agency actively encourages the use of harmful languages that reinforces discriminatory stereotypes. Instead of the word unnatural, try using the word enhanced. Instead of using the word clean athlete, try normal athlete. Replace steroid abuser with enhanced athlete. Replace performance-enhancing drugs with performance therapy or performance enhancements. Replace the word cheating with demonstration of science. I mean, it's a little bit ridiculous. I mean, I do think you should be able to take performance-enhancing drugs if you want to, and if you're like informed of the risks, involved. To be fair, though, the Enhanced Games does have a page on their website about the exploitation of athletes. It talks about how the Olympics doesn't pay their athletes or give any sort of prize money, despite the fact that they make, billions of dollars in revenue, and about how, a lot of athletes are actually not very financially stable. And it talks about how the Enhanced Games is going to, support more athletes more in that way. I think that's a really good thing, in my opinion. I also think that it's not a terrible idea in theory, I guess. I mean, it might be bad if one of the athletes just dies on the field because their heart is the size of a horse's because they've been taking steroids. Yeah, that might put a little bit of a damper on things, honestly. You know what? I think it's kind of fun. I mean, I know performance enhancing drugs are bad for you, at least to my knowledge. At least there are some negative side effects associated with using performance-enhancing drugs, but I mean, it'll still be fun. It'll still be fun to watch people run really fast, much faster than you could otherwise. I guess I'm making a pretty weak case, I think, actually, for the Enhanced Games. But it doesn't matter what I think because, what I think probably has no election on whether or not this actually happens. All right, let's just move on to our next story. Speaking of pushing our body to the absolute limit, seeing what the human capable body is human of, the international event, the Nathan's Famous 4th of July International Hot Dog Eating Contest, was held for the 16th time this past 4th of July. And we have a winner for the... What is it? He's won since 2015. So the 7th year in a row, Joey Chestnut, our favorite competitive eater, has the world record for the most hot dogs ever eaten in 10 minutes. He ate 76 hot dogs in 2021 in 10 minutes. So that's literally like faster. It's more than one every 10 seconds for 10 minutes. That is so much. That's so many hot dogs. I think I could maybe eat like 4 or 5 before I would like start throwing up. Yeah, you can't throw up. It's against the rules. This year he didn't quite reach his record. He only ate 62 hot dogs in 10 minutes. It's still a lot. He still won the entire competition. There was like a little bit of a weather delay for the event, so people were saying that might have, kind of thrown him off his game. He still won the whole thing, though. I looked online how many calories are in a hot dog. It said that there are 270 calories in a hot dog. Times that by 62, that is 16,740 calories, which is insane. He doesn't need to eat for the next 8 days after the event. Yeah, I was reading. I guess it messes him up for like 4 days. He just feels like kind of crappy for the next 4 days whenever he does the hot dog eating contest. And yet he does it. The commitment, I think that shows. And of course, we want to shout out Miki Sudo, who won the female division. This year was like the first time I actually watched like video of the hot dog eating contest. And it is impressive, but it's also like a little bit gross. And to top it off, I guess a technique that a lot of people use, at least in competitive eating when eating hot dogs, is they will eat the hot dog, just the hot dog, and then they will take the bun. At first, they'll eat the hot dog without the bun, right? And then they'll take the bun, they'll dip it in water, right? Because they're given like an unlimited amount of water to drink. They'll dip hot dog buns in water, and then they'll eat the like soggy hot dog buns. And I guess it's easier to eat it because can you imagine just eating like a dry hot dog bun? It'd be dry. But that just makes it like gross. You like see people like fisting like soggy hot dog buns. It's like, is this like okay? I'd be scared of choking, on a hot dog. That would be a bad way to go, I think. No one's ever died at this specific hot dog eating contest, though. So that's pretty good. Other competitive eaters have died, though, because they've choked to death. And of course, we want to shout out Joshua Mogul, the 38-year-old who won the Florida Keys Key Lime Pie Eating Championship, which was held also on the 4th of July, and he won that. Shout out to him. He was asked what his strategy was, and he said, and I quote, "Eat, eat, eat. Always have pie in my mouth." Which I'm like, yeah, I mean, I could have like surmised that from the point of the competition, but yeah. I don't mean to be rude. He ate an entire 9-inch pie in 3 minutes, 35 seconds. which is pretty impressive. And this year continues the tradition of there being a ton of gun violence around the country. What could be more American than being shot? You know? What are the exact statistics? There was more than a dozen people killed and 60 injured over the 4th of July day across the country. If only someone could do something about gun violence. If only there was anyone maybe who could make some sort of thing, some sort of rule that could control the amount of gun violence, some sort, maybe like a person that's like elected, like a government official. Yeah, and this comes after last year. There was a Chicago suburb named Highland Park that was the location of a mass shooting last 4th of July in 2022 that left 7 people dead. I mean, it's a scary world that we live in these days. It's very sad that this is a thing that we have to worry about. But it's what it is, I guess. What can you do about it? Who cares? We're all going to die anyways. All right. Next, let's do an update to a story that, quite frankly, I thought I was done covering last week, and that is the Titan submersible situation. I thought I had done a pretty thorough job last week, but then I read this article from the New Yorker that went more into depth than what I had originally read, and I do want to say a few more things. So just so that everybody remembers, there is a company called OceanGate that owns the submersible vessels that can take people underwater into sort of these diving expeditions. So these people include tourists. So a few weeks ago, there was a submersible called the Titan, which four passengers were on, and one pilot, which also happened to be the CEO of the company. 4 people that paid $250,000 for a ticket to sit on the Titan submersible. But I also read that actually isn't completely accurate, because I guess the way they did it was that you would make you'd have to make a $250,000 donation to OceanGate, and then you would get to ride in the submersible not as a passenger but as like a operation specialist or something. And they did that to avoid liability, because killing a passenger is worse than killing like a crew. It's really weird. Like, killing a passenger would be considered worse than killing like a crew member. I don't know why that would be true, but I guess it is. So yeah, you're like considered like a crew member if you donate enough money, and then you're like invited onto this submersible. But anyways, there were 4 passengers that had made the donation, and the CEO of the company who was piloting the vessel, Stockton Rush, it lost a few hours, like an hour and 45 minutes into its dive. It lost communication with the support vessel, and when it became clear that the Titan was actually lost when it was supposed to reascend and communication was never reestablished, the alarm was sounded, and for a solid 4 days, no one knew what happened to the Titan submersible. No one knew if they were still alive, or if they had died, or if they were just sitting in this vessel waiting to be rescued, if they were sitting on the bottom of the ocean, or if they had actually managed to surface. No one knew what was going on. 4 days later, we found out that the vessel had just imploded and that all 5 people had died instantly. It's not funny. Sorry. But the more time passes, the more we learn about how unsafe the Titan submersible really was. How many warning signs, how many red flags there were about this vessel. And honestly, it's kind of shocking. So I talked last week about a former OceanGate employee named David Lockridge, who was at the time the chief submersible officer way back in 2018. He released a report detailing his concerns with the Titan submersible. The New Yorker article goes more into depth. I don't think the report has ever gone public, but we do know quite a bit of information from the report. This is a quote from the New Yorker article concerning Dave Lockridge's report. Quote, glue was coming away from the seams of ballast bags, and mounting bolts threatened to rupture them. Both ceiling faces had errant plunge holes and O-ring grooves that deviated from standard design parameters. The exostructure and electrical pods used different metals, which could result in galvanic corrosion when exposed to seawater. The thruster cables posed snagging hazards. The Iridium satellite beacon, to transmit the submersible's position after surfacing, was attached with zip ties. The flooring was highly flammable. The interior vinyl wrapping emitted highly toxic gases upon ignition. Jesus. I don't know what a lot of that means, but it does seem pretty bad. Lockridge also took a small cross-section of material from the carbon fiber hull. With submersible vessels and submarines and things like that, it is very unusual to use the material that OceanGate used. More typically, a metal like titanium will be used for vessels that go under the sea where there's a lot of pressure. The Titan submersible used carbon fiber, which is very unusual. Essentially, carbon fiber will become weaker with every pressurization cycle that it goes under. Titanium, on the other hand, will actually get stronger the more pressurization cycles it go through. So that is kind of a big reason why titanium is typically preferred. Lockridge actually took a small cross-section of material from the carbon fiber hull. He found that it had very visible signs of delamination and porosity. It seemed possible that after repeated dives, it would come apart. He shone a light at the sample from behind and photographed beams streaming through splits in the midsection in a disturbing, irregular pattern. The only safe way to dive, Lockridge concluded, was to first carry out a full scan of the hull. Stockton Rush, though, refused to do a full scan of the hull and instead implemented this system where they would have acoustic monitoring. That if the Titan was about to fail, have a structural failure, it would start making noises that would indicate that. The computer could listen for that, and they could theoretically try to resurface before the whole thing imploded. That does sound terrifying. Stockton Rush claimed that they would have enough time to resurface. Lockridge disputed this. He disagreed. He said that it would only really give a warning a few milliseconds before the thing actually imploded. And in addition, they didn't have a baseline to understand what sounds mean that it's about to implode. They didn't have any sort of baseline to base it off of. So it was kind of hard to rely on this acoustic monitoring system. David Lockridge was actually fired soon after writing his report, probably for raising these safety concerns, which is, bad, if that's what you're being fired for. Because that's a bad look on the company, I think. Then the OceanGate, to replace David Lockridge, because remember, he was the chief submersible officer, and he was a pilot for the vessel. So in order to replace him, Rush offered the director of finance to take over as chief submersible pilot. She did not have any experience navigating submersibles or submarines. She literally just worked in finance, and yet they were offering her a job as a chief submersible pilot, which I find fascinating. So there was a reason why they chose carbon fiber. The other thing was that the shape of the vessel was criticized. Normally, deep sea submersibles choose a more circular shape, like a more spherical shape, in order to distribute the pressure evenly along the entire hull. The Titan was actually cylindrical shaped, which, doesn't distribute pressure as evenly. And the reason why they did that is because they simply wanted to be able to fit more people into it, because they wanted more passengers to be able to go see the Titanic. With a spherical submersible, there would probably only be able to have 2 or 3 people that could fit into there. So they chose a more cylindrical shape. Also, they chose carbon fiber because in order to have a submersible big enough to fit, 5 people, using titanium, I guess, would have been too heavy. So they used a lighter material, carbon fiber. So that's why they decided to do it. I don't think either of those things were very wise decisions considering the outcome. But there you go. So we do know that there was an industry leader who worked in sort of the submersible industry named Rob McCallum, who tried to reason with Rush. He said, "You are wanting to use a prototype unclassed technology in a very hostile place," he said in an email. "As much as I appreciate entrepreneurship and innovation, you are potentially putting an entire industry at risk." Rush replied that he was, quote, grown tired of industry players who try to use a safety argument to stop innovation and new entrants from entering their small existing market. He understood that his approach, quote, flies in the face of the submersible orthodoxy, but that is the nature of innovation. We have heard the baseless cries of "you are going to kill someone" way too often. I take this as a personal insult, end quote. Wow. Yeah. Well, here we are. Yeah, I guess David Lockridge tried to raise concern with OSHA. But I guess OceanGate threatened to sue David Lockridge, and he didn't have enough money to fight a court battle, so he retracted his complaint to OSHA. Which is terrible. And even before the incident where the submersible imploded, there were quite a few incidents beforehand that are pretty concerning. One involved the thruster of the Titan actually being put on backwards by mistake, and they didn't realize it until they were on a dive expedition and had made it, I think, to the bottom of the ocean floor. And when they tried to go forward, they just started spinning. And the pilot, who I think was Stockton Rush, had to figure out how to steer the submersible. He had to relearn how to do it because none of the controls worked the way they were supposed to. So after all of that, I wanted to leave you with one final update. I don't think there will be any very much news about this for a while. I know they are doing a formal investigation. They have recovered some debris from the Titan and are doing it a formal investigation to try to figure out what went wrong. But until that's finished, I don't think we'll really have any more news about this. But I do want to say that OceanGate has posted on its website that it has stopped all exploration and commercial operations. I can't say that I'm super shocked considering the situation. But yeah, I'm sure all of the, employees that worked at OceanGate, I'm sure they're all crushed. Not unlike Stockton Rush. Okay. All right. Moving on. In other nautical news, this comes from California. Sea lions are starting to act way more aggressive than normally. Not about the orcas. I don't know if you thought it was going to be about the boat sinking orcas. But no, this is completely different. These are aggressive sea lions, and they're becoming more aggressive because of an algae bloom in California, also called a red tide. Yeah, so this specific type of algae has a type of toxin called domoic acid, which makes it ways up to seals. Fish eat the algae, and then seals eat the fish. So the seals end up with very high levels of domoic acid inside of them, which I guess just makes them like super aggressive. There have been like a ton of incidences recently of sea lions attacking humans in around Southern California, which is very uncommon. Sea lions don't typically attack humans, but that's with sea lions that aren't unusually aggressive. It also sometimes just causes the sea lions to just like die, which is kind of sad. Like literally like hundreds of seals have died, probably as a result of this toxic algae. It also is like affecting like dolphins. Dolphins are also affected by this algae, and dozens of dolphins have just washed up on the beach like dead because of high levels of this toxin. This is part of the ongoing war that the ocean is waging on humans, because you might be familiar with the boat sinking orcas. Now you have the aggressive sea lions. Although this case is kind of it's probably the fault of humans. Humans don't exclusively cause red tides, but human activity can affect the frequency and the So this comes as a part of the ongoing war that the ocean is waging on humans. Although this is kind of the results of human activity, right? Humans don't exclusively cause red tides to happen, which is another name for this type of algae bloom. Humans don't exclusively cause these types of algae blooms to happen. However, human activity can affect the frequency and the intensity of these algae blooms. Increased nutrient loadings and pollution, food web altercations, introduced species, water flow modifications, and climate change are all types of human activity that can affect the presence of algae blooms. So, like runoff from like fertilizer can get into the ocean and cause algae to grow uncontrollably. Climate change, of course, could play a role. You never hear anything good about climate change. It's always bad things. It makes me sad. This is really the fault of humans. It's sad. People have been disrespecting the ocean for too long. They didn't know that it could fight back, honestly. This happened a few days ago. There was a North Carolina roller coaster named Fury 325 at the Carowinds Amusement Park. The ride is a giga coaster, so essentially just a very large roller coaster. It's one of the tallest, fastest, and longest giga coasters in North America. There was a video shot by a park visitor that actually showed one of the supports of this roller coaster completely severed from the actual track of the ride. And you could see the train of the ride coming around a corner, and you can actually see the track coming away like a foot from the support pillar. It's actually pretty terrifying. And the passenger, the visitor who had recorded it on his phone, he tried to sound the alarm. He tried to raise concerns with park employees, but they didn't take him very seriously for a very long time, which would be very frustrating, I think. Eventually, though, they did shut down the ride. I guess they have to replace just the entire support pillar because it's so damaged. That's actually terrifying. Don't you think? I don't understand how this happened, because roller coasters are subject to pretty intense inspections normally. Like every inch of a roller coaster has to be like inspected like periodically. I don't know how this like slipped past them. How one of the support pillars was completely disconnected from the actual track of the ride. But there you go. Normally roller coasters are safe in most scenarios. Here's an interesting story. There was a tourist from the UK to Italy that was filmed apparently carving his name into the wall of the Colosseum in Rome, the 2,000-year-old Colosseum. He was just carving his name into. Yeah, I guess he had scraped the words Ivan plus Haley 23. Of course, the Italians were outraged. They were looking for this guy. I would guess Ivan is his name. Just recently, they found him, though. Ivan Dimitrov is the person who defaced the Colosseum. When asked why he did it, I guess he responded that he did not realize that the Colosseum was so old. And if he had realized that it was so old, he would not have done it. How do you not realize that the Colosseum is old? It just looks old. He faces a fine of up to 5,000 euros and 15 days in jail. Wow. Yeah, I guess Haley is like his fiance, by the way. Why do tourists have to be so annoying? Just like terrible. I would hate to be an Italian living in Rome where all the tourists go. And now we end Weird News Reports typically with a really exciting article, and this week is no different. There is a man from Iowa who is looking to potentially set a world record for the largest pencil collection, was a collection of more than 70,000 pencils. At least that's what he claims. It's still being evaluated by Guinness World Records. The previous record was 24,000 pencils, which was held by a man from Uruguay. But now Aaron Bethelme of Colfax, Iowa, is looking to set the record, holding 70,000 pencils. He has said that in many instances, his pencils are the only place where there is a record of a particular business, which is fascinating because, sometimes how businesses have like their names on pencils and maybe their like phone number. I guess like some of those businesses eventually close and all that remains is just like pencils, some of which belongs to this guy. Yeah, I looked up this guy online. I guess he is like a math teacher for like a primary school. Imagine like finding out that your math teacher has a world record for the largest pencil collection. That would be crazy. All right. Well, that's all the news, pretty much.